Elena, I know those are my grandchildren.
You have lost the right to call my babies your grandsons since that night you chased me out in the rain.
Reginald Harrington froze mid-step in the luxury mall. His breath caught as he stared. Across the marble floor stood a woman he had cast into the rain, Eleanor, radiant and shaken. Before her was a stroller, holding 3 identical boys, hazel eyes, the same dimples, the same blood, his blood, impossible, he whispered, his hands trembling as the boys laughed. Eleanor slowly lifted her gaze, met his eyes, and her smile vanished, in its place warning. If you want to know how these children survived, who protected them, and why Reginald's empire is about to crumble, subscribe to Tales for You, like this video and comment below. Should Eleanor ever forgive Reginald? Now, let me tell you how this story truly began. The Harrington estate was alive that night, glowing like a palace carved out of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, spilling golden light across marble floors that had never known dust. Soft classical music floated through the air as waiters in black suits moved quietly, carrying silver trays filled with expensive wine and carefully plated meals. Everything in the house spoke of control, order, and money that could buy silence. At the center of it all stood Reginald Harrington. At 68, Reginald was not a man who needed to raise his voice to be feared. His presence alone commanded attention. His gray hair was neatly combed back, his suit perfectly pressed, and his sharp eyes missed nothing. He lifted his glass slowly, and the room fell into complete silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reginald said, his voice deep and steady, "tonight, we celebrate progress, discipline, and reward." He turned slightly toward his son. "My son, Alexander Harrington, has proven himself worthy of greater responsibility. His promotion is not a gift, it is earned." Polite applause filled the room. Alexander rose from his seat, smiling, though a tightness sat in his chest. At 30, he carried himself with confidence. But standing beside his father always made him feel like a boy being measured and judged. He adjusted his suit and nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Father. I won't disappoint you." Reginald gave a brief nod, already sitting down, his approval measured and cold. Beside Alexander sat Eleanor. She folded her hands gently on her lap, her posture calm, her expression warm. She wore a simple but elegant dress, nothing loud, nothing desperate to impress. Her beauty was quiet, the kind that came from kindness and patience rather than effort. She smiled at Alexander, her eyes full of pride. Reginald noticed the smile. His lips tightened. Dinner was served, and conversation slowly returned, but Reginald's attention kept drifting back to Eleanor. He studied her the way one inspects something that does not belong. "Eleanor," he said suddenly, cutting through the chatter, "you still teach at that public school, don't you?" "Yes, sir," she replied politely. "I love my students." Reginald hummed, "Love doesn't pay bills." A few guests chuckled softly. Alexander's fork paused midair. Father Reginald waved him off. "I'm only saying, Alexander now operates at a higher level. Appearances matter." Eleanor kept her smile. "I manage just fine." Reginald leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Of course you do. People from humble places always learn how to survive." The words landed heavily. Across the table, a woman whispered to her husband, "She's pretty, but not Harrington material." Reginald heard it. He smirked. Later, as wine glasses were refilled, Reginald leaned toward a business partner and spoke just loud enough. "Some women marry for love. Others marry for escape. Eleanor pretended not to hear, though her fingers tightened around her glass. Alexander finally spoke, his voice firm. Eleanor is my wife. I chose her. Reginald turned slowly, his gaze sharp. You chose with your heart, a mistake many powerful men make before correcting it. Silence followed. Reginald lifted his glass again. You're young, Alexander. There's still time to upgrade your life. Surround yourself with people who belong. Eleanor looked down, swallowing the ache in her chest. She stayed quiet, not because she was weak but because she loved her husband, and tonight was his night. But beneath the polished smiles and crystal lights, something dark was growing, and it was only the beginning. The charity hall breathed with quiet hope, the kind that lived in soft lights and honest smiles. White tablecloths stretched across long tables, donation boxes stood neatly by the walls, and children's drawings crooked houses, bright suns. Stick figure families covered display boards like promises waiting to be kept. Eleanor moved through the space with natural ease, her flat shoes whispering against the floor, her clipboard held close as she checked names, guided volunteers, and thanked every guest as though their presence truly mattered, because to her it did. She did not wear expensive perfume or shining jewelry. What she carried instead was warmth. When she smiled, people felt seen. When she spoke, people listened. Across the room, Alexander Harrington stood out like a sharp line in a soft painting. His suit was expensive, his watch heavy on his wrist, his posture trained by years of expectation. He had not come because he cared. He had come because his father demanded visibility. Smile, donate, leave. Reginald's voice echoed in his head. Alexander checked his phone, already bored, already planning his exit. Then he stepped forward and collided with her. The clipboard slipped. Papers floated, then fell. Oh no, I'm so sorry, Eleanor said, instantly dropping to her knees. Alexander reacted without thought, crouching to help. That was my fault, he said. I should have been looking. She glanced up, surprised by his sincerity. Most people don't say that, he smiled. Most people are wrong. They gathered the papers together, their hands brushing, neither pulling away too quickly. When they stood, neither rushed to leave. He asked what the fundraiser was for. She told him about children who needed books, uniforms, hope. He listened, truly listened, for the first time that evening. He stayed. He missed his scheduled photos. He helped stack chairs. They laughed about small things. She teased him about his polished shoes. He admitted he hated events like this. Then why come? She asked. Because I'm expected to, he replied. I don't think you should live by expectations, she said gently. That sentence stayed with him long after the night ended. Days turned into calls. Calls turned into dinners. Dinners turned into quiet walks where silence felt safe. Love did not ask permission. It arrived quickly, deeply, and without apology. When Alexander told his father he wanted to marry her, Reginald did not shout. He did not argue. He simply said, "She is temporary." Alexander married her anyway. The present was colder. The Harrington estate was grand but empty of warmth. Reginald's cruelty was subtle, polished, and deliberate. At family gatherings, he spoke just loud enough for others to hear. Where did you grow up again? He would ask Eleanor. Somewhere modest, wasn't it? When she answered calmly, he smiled thinly. At dinners, he questioned her choices. At one event, he tipped his wine glass and watched red liquid stain her dress. How unfortunate, he said. His eyes unreadable. No apology followed. Guests murmured. Eleanor cleaned herself quietly. Alexander frowned but said little. Another day, Reginald held up a grocery receipt. "Do you always spend this much?" he asked. "I cook at home," Eleanor replied. "In my day," Reginald said, "women were grateful." Alexander defended her, but carefully. "She's doing nothing wrong," Reginald only replied. "You defend her too softly." And then Alexander left again. Meetings, flights, deals. Weeks away, Eleanor ate alone at long tables meant for many. Staff avoided conversation. Reginald watched from a distance, measuring her patience, pressing where it hurt most. At night, Eleanor lay awake in a house that felt too large, holding onto the memory of laughter in a charity hall, wondering how love that began so brightly could feel so lonely now. Alexander came home late that evening, his suit jacket folded over his arm, his expression serious but controlled. Eleanor noticed it immediately. She had learned the signs. He loosened his tie slowly, as though weighing his words, then finally sat beside her on the couch. "I have to travel," he said. 2 weeks, overseas. This deal could secure my position permanently." Eleanor's heart sank, though she kept her voice gentle. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning," he replied. Silence settled between them. Eleanor took a breath, placed a hand over her stomach, then over his. "There's something I need to tell you before you go." He looked at her, curious. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, the world stopped. Then Alexander laughed softly, stunned, his eyes filling. "Are you serious?" She nodded. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "This changes everything," he whispered. "Father will have to accept you now." Eleanor hesitated. "Maybe we should wait. Let this trip end first. Let him see your success, then the news." Alexander smiled, hopeful. "A surprise," he said. "A good one." The next morning came too quickly. The sky was gray as Alexander kissed Eleanor goodbye at the door. 2 weeks, he said. "I'll call every day. I'll be here," she replied. He left. The house grew colder. That night, thunder rolled through the estate. Rain lashed against the windows. Eleanor sat alone when Reginald appeared, his face hard. "So," he said, "you think a child will secure your place?" Eleanor stood. "I love your son." Reginald laughed bitterly. "You trapped him." He pointed to the door. "Leave, now." Eleanor shook her head. "I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem," he snapped, throwing her suitcase into the rain. Clothes followed, shoes, memories. "Please," Eleanor cried, soaked, trembling. "I'm pregnant." He froze only a second, then slammed the door. Eleanor stood in the storm, heartbroken, the rain hiding her tears. She walked. The night swallowed her. Her strength failed. She collapsed. Headlights cut through the darkness. Rain fell in relentless sheets, washing the city in a cold, silver blur. Streets shimmered under the streetlights, empty except for a few late-night cars. Victor Langston drove slowly along the slick pavement, his hands steady on the steering wheel. His mind weighed with thoughts that had haunted him for years. Widowed, childless, he had spent decades building empires, donating millions, changing lives with his wealth, yet somehow he could not fill the hollow spaces in his own life. He was accustomed to order, to control, to knowing every outcome before it happened. But that night, fate intervened. She appeared on the side of the road like a shadow stitched from sorrow and rain. A woman collapsed onto the wet asphalt, drenched, shivering, her dark hair plastered to her face. She barely moved. Her form curled inward as if the storm itself had reached into her soul and broken her. Something stirred inside Victor, something he had buried long ago, an urge to protect, to act, to save. Without thinking, He braked, stepping out of the car, the rain soaking his suit, the cold biting at his skin. "Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was calm but urgent. He knelt beside her, hands gently lifting her arms. She groaned, blinking up at him, her lips quivering. "Please," she whispered, I need somewhere to rest." "You're safe now," Victor said, sliding his coat from his shoulders and wrapping it around her. The warmth was immediate, shielding her from the storm. Carefully, he helped her into the car. The interior heat enveloped her as he started the engine again. He glanced at her, noticing the way her body trembled, how her eyes darted around with unease, as if danger had followed her even here. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked gently. "Eleanor," she managed. Her voice was soft, fragile. "Eleanor," he repeated, committing it to memory as he drove. Victor's mansion was not far, but the drive seemed to stretch endlessly. When they arrived, the staff trained, efficient, used to the unexpected rush to their aid. "Prepare towels, blankets, call the doctor," Victor instructed, his voice steady, authoritative. Eleanor allowed herself to be led inside, shivering, exhausted, feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. She had no home, no refuge. And yet this stranger though he was offered warmth, safety, concern. The doctor arrived, checked her carefully, wrapped her in dry clothes, and fed her warm tea. Victor remained nearby, silent but watchful, never prying too deeply, yet never letting her go entirely. Hours passed, and the storm outside raged on, but inside, Eleanor began to feel something she had not in weeks gone. Later, as she rested in a soft chair by the fireplace, Victor finally spoke, his voice low, measured, but tinged with curiosity. "Eleanor, can you tell me what happened?" She hesitated, glancing down, tracing the rim of the mug in her hands. I had no choice. My husband, my father-in-law, they forced me out," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. Victor's gaze softened. "You're safe here. I promise you that." Silence stretched between them, comfortable yet heavy, carrying unspoken questions and the weight of the world outside. Days passed. Victor ensured she was cared for, gently urging her to eat, rest, recover. He did not press for details, but his presence became a steady reassurance. Slowly, Eleanor's walls began to crumble. She began to trust him, just a little, the way one might trust a lighthouse in a storm, a guide in unfamiliar darkness. One morning, after sunlight had broken through clouds and painted the mansion's marble floors in gold, Victor approached her quietly. "Eleanor, stay," he said. "Work with me. Help me organize my foundation. I want you here." She looked up at him, her eyes wide. I don't know if I can." He smiled softly, leaning slightly forward, not commanding, only inviting. "I don't ask, I offer. I believe in second chances. Everyone deserves them." Her lips trembled as she considered it. Her past, the nights alone, the fear, the betrayal, it all pressed on her. But here, in this mansion, with this man who asked nothing but gave everything, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Slowly, she nodded. I'll stay." Victor's smile widened, though it did not reach the sadness in his eyes. "Good. We'll take it one step at a time. You'll see, life can still be kind." And for the first time in weeks, Eleanor believed him. Weeks drifted by, slow and steady, each day stretching into the next. Yet within the walls of Victor Langston's mansion, they felt different, vast, towering, and imposing. The estate had once seemed like a prison to Eleanor, a labyrinth of wealth and shadow, with ceilings so high she feared the air itself might escape. Now, as the days passed. She found comfort in its silence. She moved with purpose, organizing offices, reviewing documents, answering emails, filing charitable applications, and helping Victor with the logistics of his philanthropic empire. Each task, each simple responsibility, grounded her. It reminded her that she could contribute, that she could matter somewhere beyond the Harrington's suffocating world. Victor was always near but never intrusive. He appeared quietly in doorways, watched without judging, offered a soft word here, a steadying hand there. One morning, as she balanced a stack of heavy files, he leaned against the doorway. Watching, "Careful with that," he said. "Those folders are deceptively heavy." She laughed lightly, a sound that felt almost foreign in its ease. "I think your entire foundation is a mountain of paperwork," she teased. He gave a small, rare smile. "Then consider you my mountain climber." For weeks, life moved in this rhythm: work, small conversations, quiet dinners, long walks around the estate's sprawling gardens. She began to recognize the subtle routines of his world, the way he paused to study reports before speaking, the brief hesitations when speaking of personal matters, the way he always noticed if she looked tired or overworked. Gradually, a trust began to form between them, one that Eleanor had never expected to feel with a man of such power and mystery. Yet there was the divorce, the shadow she had carried silently for weeks. One evening, after a late dinner, Victor approached her in the study, his dark eyes soft with care. "Eleanor," he began, voice calm but steady, "do you want me to help with the divorce?" Her hands tightened on the papers she was sorting. The thought of facing Alexander, of enduring a legal battle she hadn't initiated but could not escape, made her chest constrict painfully. And the thought that her messages to him had likely been intercepted by Reginald tightened that constriction further. Her lips trembled. Yes, she whispered. "I need to start over. Completely." Victor nodded. "Then we'll do it properly. No shortcuts, no interference, no one will touch you." His words were firm, yet gentle, a steady promise in a world that had proven itself unreliable. The next days became a whirlwind of forms, signatures, and careful preparation. Eleanor tried reaching Alexander, but every message she sent seemed to vanish into thin air. Victor, perceptive as always, noticed her frustration. One evening, he said quietly, "I think your father-in-law intercepted them." Her fingers clenched. Of course he did. The truth stung worse than she expected. Why would he ever let me speak to Alexander? Victor placed a hand lightly on hers. "It's not your fault. Don't dwell on it. Focus on your life, on your future. You can't let anyone else dictate it for you." Days later, after weeks of silence, Eleanor finally found the courage to reveal the secret she had kept buried, the one truth she feared might change everything between them. She sat across from Victor, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "Victor, there's something I haven't told you." He leaned forward slightly, the faint crease of curiosity on his brow softening. "What is it?" Her voice quivered as she met his gaze. I'm pregnant." For a heartbeat, Victor said nothing, his expression still, measured. Then a small, soft smile spread across his face. "Eleanor, you will not face this alone. I will be here. Always," and he meant it. From that moment, he became an unwavering presence. They attended doctor's appointments together. He arrived on time, every time, always bringing water, a warm jacket, and a gentle smile. He asked the questions she might have forgotten, reminded her to eat and rest, and quietly insisted she listen to her body. Each small gesture, each careful word, slowly broke down the walls Eleanor had built over months of fear and betrayal. She began to trust him fully, to allow herself to lean on someone without shame. Yet even within this safe haven, shadows lingered. Strange phone calls began to appear at Victor's office. The line rang once, twice, then clicked, other times. A voice whispered incoherently before disconnecting. Victor frowned, tension tightening the line between his brows. One evening, as the rain pelted the mansion's windows, he spoke to her in a quiet voice. "Someone is watching me. Someone wants to know what we're doing." Eleanor touched his arm gently. "Do you think it? Could it have anything to do with the Harringtons?" He shook his head slowly, though his eyes were sharp. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I promise, it will not reach you." Then came the night that would test them both. A sudden, sharp pain gripped Eleanor's abdomen, fierce and terrifying, and she collapsed to the floor, gasping, panic rising in her chest. Victor was immediately at her side. "Eleanor, stay calm," he said, lifting her gently into his arms. "I'm right here. You're safe. Breathe with me." The drive to the hospital was tense, the rain hammering the car, the city a blur of lights and wet asphalt. Eleanor clutched his arm, trembling, heart racing, unable to speak through the fear and pain. His voice, low and steady, anchored her. "In and out. I'm right here. Focus on my voice. You're strong. We'll get through this together." At the hospital, the doctors moved quickly, lights bright, machines beeping. Victor remained at her side, holding her hand, brushing damp hair from her forehead, whispering encouragements, never leaving. Every glance, every touch, every whispered word carried reassurance and an unspoken intimacy that Eleanor hadn't expected, yet could not resist. When the doctors finally assured her that she and the baby were safe, relief poured over her in waves, leaving her trembling. She looked at Victor, eyes wide, voice husky. "Thank you for being here." His hand tightened around hers. "I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever." And in that quiet hospital room, amid the steady beeps and fluorescent lights, a bond had formed, subtle, powerful, unspoken, and undeniable. Trust, care, and a tentative spark of something deeper lingered in the space between them. For the first time in months, Eleanor felt what she had almost forgotten: hope, safety, and the fragile possibility of happiness. The night the contractions began, Eleanor knew something had changed. A sharp, sudden pain ripped through her abdomen, and she gasped, gripping the edge of the bed as her heart raced. Victor, who had been quietly reading in the next room, was immediately at her side. "Eleanor," his voice was low, calm, and steady, cutting through her panic. "It's time. You're safe. I'm right here. Breathe with me. In and out. In and out." Tears blurred her vision as she clutched his hand, the storm outside echoing the turmoil inside her. Rain pelted the mansion's windows in sheets, the wind rattling the glass. I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, voice trembling. "You can," Victor said firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Every breath, every second, you're not alone. We're in this together. Focus on me, just me." By the time the ambulance arrived, Eleanor's body was shaking with exhaustion and fear. Victor stayed by her side, his hand never leaving hers. His presence a steady anchor as the paramedics lifted her onto a stretcher. "You're strong," he murmured. "You're going to meet your sons very soon." The hospital was bright, bustling with the urgent rhythm of life. Nurses guided them to a delivery room, and Victor helped her onto the bed, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You're doing so well," he whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Oz passed in a blur of contractions, instructions, and unrelenting pain. Eleanor clung to Victor, who spoke soft encouragements, reminding her to breathe, reminding her of her strength. "You've carried them this far," he said. "Now it's time to bring them into the world." Then, at last, the cries filled the room, 3 tiny, fragile cries that shook her heart in the best possible way. One by one, the boys were placed in her arms, Ethan, Liam, and Noah. Premature but healthy, they looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes, tiny fingers curling around hers. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face as she gazed at them, overcome by a mixture of relief and love she had never imagined. Victor stood close, brushing her hair back gently, his own eyes glistening. "They're perfect," he whispered, "all 3 of them, because of you." Eleanor turned to him, voice shaking. "I couldn't have done this without you. Not a single moment. You've been my strength, my calm, my safe place." Victor's chest tightened, a rare vulnerability crossing his face. "And you've been mine. From the moment I saw you fight for your life, for your dignity, for your children, I realized, I love you, Eleanor. I've loved you. I want to spend my life with you, not just as their protector, but as yours. Will you marry me?" Her breath caught. Tears fell freely as she whispered, "Yes, Victor, I will." Their wedding was quiet, intimate, held in the mansion's sunlit garden. Only a few close friends and family attended. A small celebration of love that had been forged in pain and hardship. The boys were swaddled in soft blankets, cooing softly, while Eleanor moved with grace and confidence, her simple gown flowing, her eyes radiant. Victor's hand was steady at her back as they exchanged vows, words full of promise and unspoken understanding. Each glance a testament to the bond they had formed through storms and fear. 6 months later, the mansion was alive with laughter and the chaos of 3 energetic boys. Eleanor moved gracefully through the halls, elegant, confident, radiant. She bathed, fed, and played with Ethan, Liam, and Noah, her hands gentle yet assured, her presence commanding and calm. Victor watched from the doorway, pride and adoration in his eyes, ready to step in if the boys became too rambunctious, but mostly letting Eleanor shine in her new role as mother and wife. Yet even in this bliss, shadows lurked at the edges. Victor's phone began to receive strange, anonymous messages, threats, hints that someone knew about Eleanor's past, that someone might try to use it against them. He scowled, the muscles in his jaw tightening as he read each one. Eleanor noticed his tension one evening and approached him, resting a hand on his arm. "Victor, what is it?" "What's wrong?" He forced a reassuring smile, though his eyes betrayed concern. "Nothing you need to worry about. Just someone trying to unsettle me. But I won't let it touch you. Not you. Not the boys. We're safe here. Always." Eleanor's gaze narrowed slightly, sharp and perceptive. "Do you think, could it be Reginald, or someone connected to him?" Victor's expression darkened. "I don't know yet, but whoever it is, they will discover that we are not so easily shaken. Our family is strong. Eleanor, stronger than any threat." In the quiet of their home, surrounded by the laughter of Ethan, Liam, and Noah, Eleanor finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. She was no longer the frightened woman Reginald had cast out into the rain. She was a mother, a wife, a partner, and a survivor. She had endured storms, pain, betrayal, and fear, and emerged stronger. Her bond with Victor was unbreakable, forged through trials and tempered by care, trust, and love. Shadows might linger at the edges, but together, They were ready for whatever came next. Alexander Harrington stepped off the private jet, the crisp evening air of New York brushing against his face. His briefcase was heavy. International merger for the Harrington Empire. But no deal, no negotiation. No signed document could ease the growing pit in his stomach. From the moment he'd boarded the plane, a quiet dread had gnawed at him, a feeling he could not name but could not ignore. The mansion loomed ahead, its familiar silhouette now somehow colder, more imposing. As he walked up the grand steps, briefcase in hand, his mind raced with anticipation. He expected to see Eleanor waiting in the sunlit foyer, her smile bright and warm, the calm in his chaotic life. But the house was silent, empty. His pulse quickened. "Alexander," Reginald's voice called from the drawing room, smooth, controlled, practiced. "You're back early." Alexander froze, suspicion prickling at the edges of his thoughts. He stepped into the room. His father was seated in his leather armchair, the shadows of the evening highlighting the sharp lines of his face. A glass of brandy sat untouched on the side table. "Where is she?" Alexander asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Reginald's expression was careful, measured. He lifted his hand in a gesture of dismissal. "Eleanor, she left." "Alex, voluntarily, went with another man, apparently. You know, someone she's known for a while." Alexander's chest tightened, disbelief and shock twisting in his gut. "What are you saying, father?" She wouldn't leave me." "Not like that." Reginald shrugged, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Well, she did. I suppose she thought it was best to leave quietly. You've been busy with work." She took matters into her own hands. Alexander's mind spun. No calls, no messages, no goodbyes. Reginald's words sounded like poison in his ears. "She didn't leave voluntarily," he said through clenched teeth. She wouldn't do that." Reginald waved a hand as if dismissing the thought entirely. "Well, that's the story you'll have to accept. Alex, she left. Nothing you could have done would have stopped her." Alexander turned abruptly. Pacing the room, the mansion felt suffocating now, its grandeur oppressive. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. Rage and despair warred in him. "I should have been here. I should have." "You were away on business," Reginald cut in sharply. As if that excused everything. "I tried to handle things. You should focus on your work. That is your life, your duty." Alexander shook his head, frustration and grief coiling in his chest. "No, I can't just focus on work. She's gone. And I don't believe your story for a second." Reginald's jaw tightened, a shadow of guilt flickering across his features before he masked it. He rose and paced slowly, staring out the window at the rain-soaked gardens. "You think I care, of course I care. But you don't understand the complications, how delicate things are." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "Complications? What complications?" Reginald sighed, as though the weight of the world pressed against him. "Life, choices, responsibilities. She was a distraction. Alex, perhaps you needed to focus on your role here, on the company." Alexander's hands clenched into fists. "So you just lied to me? Let her disappear while I worked like a fool?" Reginald's eyes darkened, the mask of control slipping for a heartbeat. I did what I thought was best. For you. For the family. For the empire." Alexander shook his head, rising abruptly. "For me, no. You did it for yourself. You've controlled everything, every detail, every decision, and now she's gone because of it." The room fell silent, Save for the faint tick of an ornate clock, Reginald sank back into his chair, guilt tightening round him like a vice. Memories flashing briefly to a childhood of want and struggle he had long suppressed, the nights of hunger, the relentless pressure, the fear of failure. Those memories had shaped him, hardened him, and now, he wondered if they had also made him cruel in ways he had never admitted. Alexander, meanwhile, retreated into his own private storm. Work became a refuge and a prison. Meetings blurred into nights spent signing documents, negotiating deals, and attending events where the laughter of others felt hollow. He buried himself in spreadsheets, contracts, and presentations, each success a thin bandage over the ache of Eleanor's absence. But Alexander was not passive. Quietly, he began to move behind the scenes, contacting a private investigator, a man who could dig, uncover, and track. He did not know what he would find. But he needed answers. He needed to know the truth. Reginald, meanwhile, tried to dismiss his own unease. Yet at night, when the house was still and the mansion's silence stretched long and hollow, he began to have nightmares. Shadows of lost heirs, shadows of a woman soaked in rain, shadows of the family he might have destroyed. He would awaken, heart pounding, staring into the darkness, whispering to himself, "She's gone. They're gone. What have I done?" And in those moments, the facade of the ruthless tycoon faltered. Behind the power, the wealth, the sharp suits, and the cold gaze, there was a man haunted by the consequences of his choices. A man who, for all his pride, could not escape the echoes of the past he had tried to bury. Alexander, meanwhile, sat in his office late one night, the city lights stretching endlessly outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. He stared at the empty chair across from his desk, the absence of Eleanor a void that no business deal could fill. He pressed a button on his phone and spoke quietly into the receiver. "I need you to find her. I don't care what it takes. Just find her." The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "Consider it done, sir." Alexander hung up, staring out into the night. His heart ached, his mind raced, but a spark of determination had ignited. He would uncover the truth. He would find Eleanor, and though Reginald had tried to suppress it, control it, and twist it, Alexander would not allow the past to steal what should have been his life, his love, his family. The mall was bustling with weekend shoppers, the echo of footsteps and chatter bouncing off the polished marble floors. Storefronts glimmered under the bright lights. Windows lined with designer clothing, sparkling jewelry, and the latest luxury gadgets. Eleanor navigated the crowds with practiced ease, pushing the double stroller in which her triplet sons, Ethan, Liam, and Noah, sat bundled in soft blankets. Their tiny hands grasped at the colorful toys dangling from the stroller's frame. Their laughter a soft, musical sound that drew smiles from passing strangers. Eleanor herself was radiant, dressed in a chic but understated outfit that accentuated her elegance and confidence, a soft scarf draped down her shoulders. Designer boots clicking lightly against the floor as she moved. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her face held that calm, serene beauty that seemed untouchable. A stark contrast to the chaos and struggle she had endured not long ago. As she stopped in front of a boutique window, adjusting the stroller and smiling at the boy's playful antics, a familiar presence caught her eye, though at first she did not immediately register him. Reginald Harrington, sharp suit impeccably tailored, briefcase in hand, was walking toward an appointment for a meeting nearby. The first thing that struck him was the children, 3 small boys, their hazel eyes wide, their dimples deep and unmistakable. His chest tightened as recognition hit him like a thunderbolt. The resemblance was undeniable. Alexander's blood, flowing vividly in the next generation. Reginald's breath caught, and he muttered under his breath, Those are my grandsons, Alexander's blood." He approached slowly, keeping his composure as best as he could, though his pulse raced and his mind whirled with disbelief. "Excuse me," he called, his voice slightly louder. Forcing Eleanor to glance up, she turned, her expression immediately cooling as her sharp eyes met his. He froze for a moment, taking in her confidence, her poise, and the unmistakable truth in the children's features. "Those are my grandsons, aren't they?" His tone was a mix of disbelief, awe and a hint of desperation. Alexander's blood. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. She leaned slightly on the stroller, keeping the boys between herself and Reginald. Her voice was calm but carried an icy edge that froze him in place. "Stay away from us, or you'll regret it," she said firmly. Her tone left no room for negotiation, no room for excuses. Every syllable cut through him like a blade. A warning wrapped in controlled composure. Reginald's mind raced. This woman, who had once been a vulnerable target of his cruelty, now stood unshakable before him. Her power was quiet but absolute, her elegance and composure a shield he could not penetrate. He took a careful step closer, his mind calculating, and then stopped. She had the boys. She had Victor's protection. And there was no room for recklessness, but he had to have proof, something tangible. Without thinking, he fumbled for his phone, snapping a quick, discreet photo of Eleanor and the children before she could react. She glanced back briefly, suspicion flashing in her eyes, but he froze, pretending to adjust his tie, and she turned away, continuing down the mall corridor with calm determination. Reginald's pulse pounded. He had seen them, he had proof, but the sight of them left him unsteady. A surge of conflicting emotions coursed through him, pride, anger, longing, and the faintest twinge of guilt he would never admit. He watched as she guided the stroller with such grace, the boys laughing and reaching for the dangling toys. The life she had built, the peace she had found, it was all tangible and untouchable. And yet, he could not resist the pull of obsession, the need to know more. He followed discreetly, keeping his distance as she moved through the throng of shoppers. Eleanor's eyes were focused straight ahead, calm and purposeful, her steps steady, but Reginald could feel the tension in her posture, the silent vigilance that told him she was aware of potential threats, even if she did not know they were from him. He watched as she exited through the side doors and approached a sleek black limousine parked at the curb. The driver opened the door, and Eleanor lifted the stroller with practiced ease into the vehicle. She gave a small nod of acknowledgement to the driver, then took her seat beside the boys, tucking the blankets around them gently. Reginald's heart thumped in his chest as the limo door closed, the dark-tinted windows shielding them from view. His mind raced with possibilities, questions, and schemes. Would he confront Victor directly? Could he approach Eleanor? Or would that be foolish, dangerous, and ultimately futile? The photo in his phone was a small victory, but it only deepened the suspense, leaving him with more questions than answers. As the limousine glided smoothly into traffic, Eleanor leaned back, her fingers brushing a lock of hair from her face. She looked at the boys, their laughter soft and pure, and allowed herself a fleeting smile. For now, they were safe, shielded from the world that had once threatened to tear them apart. And for now, she held the quiet power of control in her hands, a mother, a protector, a woman unbroken. Reginald lingered at the curb, the bustling mall around him a blur. His mind whirled with plans, suspicions, and a gnawing obsession he could not yet name. the scene he had witnessed, the children he had glimpsed. The woman he had once dismissed, it all weighed on him like a storm he could not escape. And in that moment, the viewer senses the brewing tension. Would he confront Victor? Would he attempt to reach Eleanor? Or would this be the beginning of a battle that neither he nor anyone else could foresee? Reginald's car skidded to a stop outside the Harrington estate, tires squealing slightly on the wet driveway. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white. Heart hammering in a rhythm he had not felt in years. The photo burned in his mind, the image of Eleanor, radiant and untouchable, pushing a stroller with 3 small boys whose hazel eyes mirrored Alexander's own. He had tried to keep his composure in the mall, but the moment he had seen them, something inside him had shifted, a combination of awe, fear, and an unfamiliar surge of desperation. Inside the mansion, Alexander was in his office, buried in contracts and financial reports. His focus a thin veneer over the turmoil gnawing at his chest. The past few weeks had been a haze of work, a distraction from the ache of not knowing where Eleanor had gone, what she was doing, or if she was safe. Alexander, Reginald's voice cut through the silence as he burst into the room, rain droplets still clinging to his coat. Alexander, you need to see this. Now, Alexander looked up, irritation flickering across his face. Father, I'm busy. Busy, Reginald interrupted, his voice sharp, urgent. You need to see this. It's your children. He thrust his phone toward Alexander, who instinctively grabbed it, squinting at the screen. There they were, Ethan, Liam, and Noah, sitting snugly in a stroller, laughing and reaching for colorful toys, Eleanor beside them, calm, radiant, confident. Alexander's breath hitched, his heart lurched, disbelief and joy colliding violently. No, this can't be. There, those are my boys. Reginald nodded, his face unreadable but tense. Yes. Your grandsons, Alexander's blood. The resemblance is unmistakable. Alexander's hands shook slightly as he lowered the phone, staring at his father with a mixture of fury and incredulity. You lied to me. You told me she left voluntarily, that she abandoned me. Reginald's mouth tightened into a thin line. I did what I thought was best. I tried to protect the family. Alexander, you were busy. Consumed with work. I didn't want. I thought you thought. Alexander's voice rose, filled with disbelief and anger. You lied to me for weeks. I trusted you, and you. He stopped, breathing heavily, chest rising and falling, eyes dark with emotion. Then, his expression softened slightly, overtaken by awe as the image of the boys replayed in his mind. They're real. They're here. And they're alive. Yes, Reginald said quietly. And now we have to act. Alexander's mind raced. His initial fury against his father blended with a fierce, protective joy. The boys were his blood, his family, and they were out there safe for now, but vulnerable. He felt a surge of determination, a need to reclaim them. We need a plan, he said finally, his voice measured but urgent. We can't let her keep them unchallenged. Without resources, without support, she might be vulnerable. Reginald's eyes flickered, calculating. I've already contacted lawyers. Aggressive ones. We'll file for custody immediately. Grounds, abandonment, neglect, questioning her fitness as a parent. We'll move quickly before she can consolidate her position. Alexander hesitated, his mind torn. Part of him, the part still in love with Eleanor. The part that remembered her kindness, her strength, rebuked him. Could he really fight for custody, knowing she had done nothing wrong, but another part, the part conditioned by family duty, by the need to assert control, by loyalty to his father, urged him forward. I'll go along, he said slowly, but this doesn't feel right. His voice faltered, betraying the conflict churning inside him. Reginald's eyes narrowed, a mixture of satisfaction and impatience. Don't let sentiment cloud judgment, Alexander. This is about power, influence, and family. Move carefully, but move decisively. Meanwhile, the private investigator Alexander had discreetly hired during his trip returned with crucial intelligence. Mr. Alexander, I've uncovered something significant, the investigator said, voice low and careful. The woman you're seeking, Eleanor, she's not unprotected. The man with her, Victor Langston, he's wealthy, extremely influential, and connected. Any custody attempt will face formidable opposition. Alexander's brow furrowed. Victor Langston, he murmured, recalling the name from hushed conversations he had overheard at business gatherings. The billionaire philanthropist. Yes, the investigator confirmed. He's been funding legal teams, security, and protective measures. This isn't a simple matter of filing papers in court. He has influence that rivals even the Harrington name in some circles. If we underestimate him, we could face serious consequences. Reginald's jaw tightened. His initial confidence wavered, though he masked it quickly. Influence, connections. We can handle influence, money, persistence. Leverage, that is what wins battles. No one is untouchable. Alexander remained silent for a long moment, thoughts colliding with duty, desire, and morality. His hands flexed against the desk, the weight of choice pressing down on him. They were his children, his blood, and yet he remembered Eleanor's face, the calm, composed woman who had survived the storms his family had unleashed. Could he truly fight against her? Could he override his lingering love in the name of family duty? Reginald, sensing the hesitation, leaned in slightly. Alexander, you must decide. Hesitation now will cost us. The longer we wait, the stronger her defenses become. Are you with me, or are you weak? Alexander's eyes hardened, torn yet resolute. I'm with you, for now. But we proceed carefully. We must understand everything before making a move. This Victor, he's not an ordinary man. We cannot underestimate him. Reginald nodded slowly, masking the flicker of doubt rising within him. The plan was set. Aggressive lawyers, custody filings, pressure, everything aligned in the Harrington way. But beneath the surface, Alexander felt the silent pull of conscience. The memory of Eleanor's warmth. The echo of her resilience. He didn't know if he could truly reconcile these forces when the moment of confrontation arrived. Outside the towering windows of the Harrington estate, the city lights glimmered, oblivious to the storm brewing within the family walls, a chessboard of strategy, loyalty, love, and vengeance had been set in motion. And neither Reginald nor Alexander fully understood the forces that would rise to meet them. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the sprawling estate, the manicured lawns and tall hedges a serene contrast to the storm brewing in Eleanor's mind. She sat at the glass dining table, the triplets napping in their nearby nursery, soft cries and coos faintly drifting through the open door. Victor entered the room quietly, closing the door behind him, and for a moment neither spoke. He could feel the weight in her shoulders, the tension in her jaw, the way her hands fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. Eleanor, Victor began carefully, his voice low, warm, almost soothing. You look like you've seen a ghost. She exhaled slowly, running a hand through her hair. Victor, Today at the mall, I saw him, Reginald. Victor asked, his tone neutral but alert, a subtle hardness creeping into his words. She nodded, her gaze distant, yet sharp. He saw me with the boys. He recognized them immediately. He called them his grandsons. Her hands trembled slightly as she relived the moment. I had to warn him. I told him to stay away, but he followed us for a while before I got into the limo. I think he took a photo. Victor's eyes narrowed, and the muscles in his jaw tensed. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, thinking through the implications. He's dangerous. He said finally, his voice low but firm, I can't let him or anyone get close to you or the boys. We'll tighten security. I'll double the bodyguards. Cameras, patrols, monitoring, everything. No one gets through unnoticed. Eleanor looked at him, a mixture of relief and unease in her expression. Victor, thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out, he replied. Moving closer, placing a reassuring hand over hers, I won't allow anything to happen to you, not ever. But even as they planned precautions, another storm loomed, one of words, lies, and manipulation. News outlets, once benign, now published headlines that twisted reality into something grotesque. Marcus Kane, a cunning and ruthless competitor of Victor's with deep ties to Reginald's empire, had begun leaking rumors, false stories of Eleanor's infidelity, painting her as an opportunist who had manipulated Victor for money and status. Eleanor's phone vibrated relentlessly. Messages, notifications, screenshots of tabloid articles. Her stomach twisted in knots, old memories clawing their way to the surface. The paparazzi had found her, flashing cameras at random corners of the streets, reporters whispering her name, catching images of her children. Every headline, every photograph, forced her to relive the humiliation, the fear, the nights when she had wandered in the rain. Alone and desperate, Victor noticed her growing agitation and placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't look at them, he said firmly. None of this is true. It's manipulation. Kane is behind this. Someone with his resources and hatred wants to destabilize us. Ignore them. You focus on the boys. And yourself. Let me handle the rest. She nodded, but the anxiety lingered like a shadow, a reminder that the world outside their walls could still hurt them. Days later, Victor suggested a trip to the park, a rare moment of normalcy. The sun shone softly through the trees, and Eleanor pushed the stroller with the boys, smiling as their laughter mingled with the chirping of birds. But even in this peaceful scene, danger lurked. Masked figures emerged from the edges of the path, moving with silent precision. Eleanor's heart skipped, a primal warning rising from deep inside her. She instinctively gripped the stroller tighter, her voice catching in fear. Victor. Something's wrong. Victor's eyes went sharp instantly, scanning the area. Bodyguards positioned strategically throughout the park sprang into action, moving with the speed and coordination of trained professionals. Eleanor's hands shook as the figures advanced. But within moments, the masked intruders were intercepted. Surrounded by a wall of security, the boys, oblivious to the threat, cooed and laughed, untouched. Eleanor exhaled shakily, leaning into Victor's chest. Thank God, she whispered, her voice trembling with relief and lingering fear. Victor brushed a damp lock of hair from her face, his own expression a mixture of concern and controlled anger. No one touches you or these boys. Not Kane, not Reginald, not anyone. I will protect you, always. Eleanor nodded, burying her face briefly against his chest, but her mind raced with questions. Was this Reginald, finally taking action, Or was it Cain? Seizing an opportunity to strike at Victor's family and reputation, the uncertainty gnawed at her. A tension she could not shake. Every rustle in the trees, every passerby, made her heart skip. A reminder that safety was always fragile. Victor, sensing her unrest, whispered again, "We'll find out who's behind this, but for now, focus on the boys. You, me, and them, we're safe here." Eleanor clutched the stroller handle. Eyes sweeping the park, heart pounding. Mind spinning with possibilities. The children's laughter filled the air, innocent and untainted. A sharp contrast to the dangerous world inching ever closer. She looked at Victor, trusting him completely, yet the suspense of what lay ahead, whether Reginald's vengeance or Cain's schemes, loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, ready to strike without warning. And in that moment, the viewer is left holding their breath, wondering, who is truly behind the attacks? Is it the vengeful grandfather, blinded by pride and obsession, or the calculating rival, exploiting the situation for power and profit? The answer remains just out of reach. A suspenseful thread pulling forward into the next chapter of their lives. The Harrington estate, usually a bastion of control and authority, now felt tense and uneasy, like the calm before a storm. Court dates loomed closer, each tick of the clock a reminder that Eleanor's quiet triumph over Reginald's cruelty was about to be tested publicly. In his study, Reginald paced back and forth, the polished floors reflecting the sharp lines of his furrowed brow. His mind spun with strategies, manipulations, and schemes, the image of the triplets and Eleanor's calm composure haunting him in ways he hadn't expected. "I can't believe she's holding the boys like this," Reginald muttered under his breath. "Alexander should have control. This should never have happened." His assistant cleared their throat. Nervously, "Sir, perhaps we should." "Silence," Reginald snapped. "No one tells me what to do. Especially now." His thoughts shifted suddenly, a dangerous gleam in his eye. "There may still be a way, a back channel. If I offer her money, a portion of the fortune, she may compromise. Perhaps she'll share the boys. That's leverage, that's power." Meanwhile, in her quiet, sunlit living room, Eleanor received the first of Reginald's attempts. A polished envelope sat on the table, the Harrington crest staring back at her like a warning. She picked it up carefully, her fingers brushing the crisp paper. Inside were legal offers. Cold and calculating money, influence, and the suggestion that she cooperate by allowing Reginald and Alexander access to the boys. Her eyes narrowed, lips pressing into a thin line. She called Victor immediately, her voice firm, but tinged with exasperation. "Victor, he's trying to bribe me, to get me to share the children. He doesn't understand." Victor, seated across from her, studied the papers, his expression unreadable but intense. "Eleanor, listen to me," he said slowly, voice heavy with certainty. "You do not owe him anything. The boys are yours to protect. You do not compromise your safety, your family, or your integrity for money or manipulation. Not now, not ever." Eleanor exhaled, relief mingling with determination. "I won't," she said. "I can't. They mean too much to me." "He's lost all right to dictate our lives." Then came Alexander. He had been careful, moving with stealth, slipping into the estate for a private meeting away from his father's watchful eyes. Eleanor felt her chest tighten when she saw him, the mixture of fear, lingering affection, and unresolved anger clashing violently inside her. "Eleanor," Alexander began, voice low, almost pleading. I need to speak with you, please, just for a moment." She studied him cautiously. Why? Now, Alexander, after weeks of silence. I'm sorry, he said, desperation and regret warring in his tone. I should have protected you. I should have fought harder. Please, I just want access to the boys. I want a chance to be their father. Eleanor's gaze softened briefly, vulnerability peeking through the armor she had built. Alexander, you have to understand. Your father, his cruelty nearly cost me my pregnancy. Do you realize that? He threw me into the rain. He humiliated me. He tried to break me completely. Alexander flinched, guilt cutting through him like a sharp knife. I didn't know. I should have. I failed you. You failed, Eleanor admitted quietly, voice shaking with emotion. But now I need you to understand boundaries. I will not compromise their safety. I will not compromise my family. I love them, and I will protect them, no matter what. And that includes protecting them from you if necessary. Alexander swallowed hard, pain and regret flashing across his face. I understand. I hope one day you can forgive me. I hope. Victor, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, his presence calm but firm. Alexander, he said, voice carrying quiet authority, these children are under my protection. They are safe. I will not allow anyone to jeopardize that. Not your father. Not you. Eleanor's decisions are final. Eleanor nodded slightly, gratitude and relief mingling in her expression. She looked at Victor, then back at Alexander. I hope one day we can find peace, but for now, my family stays together. No one else interferes. As this private confrontation unfolded, Victor uncovered a shocking revelation in his own files. Hidden in the archives of his early business dealings, his expression darkened as he spoke, voice low and tight with anger. Eleanor, Reginald wasn't just an enemy to you. He sabotaged me years ago, when I was building my first ventures. He ruined contracts, spread lies, tried to destroy everything I worked for, out of jealousy. He has personal motives beyond these children. This isn't just about control. He has history with me. Eleanor's eyes widened, the weight of the revelation sinking. So all of this, it's personal. Yes, Victor replied. Josette, he underestimated me. He underestimated you. But now, he's crossed lines he doesn't even understand. Back in the Harrington estate, Reginald's paranoia was rising. Every conversation seemed suspect. Every glance a betrayal. He paced the marble floors of his study, muttering under his breath, who's talking, who's leaking information? Is Alexander working against me? No, that's impossible. He wouldn't. But his own suspicions, sharpened by fear and obsession, erupted in a heated argument later that night. Alexander, confronting him about the escalating plans for custody, felt the storm break. Father, you can't keep manipulating everyone. You've crossed lines, laws, ethics, decency. You're tearing this family apart. Reginald slammed his hand on the desk, eyes blazing. I am protecting the family, Alexander. I am securing our legacy. You are too weak to understand. Alexander's voice shook with frustration and anger. Weak, you're blinded by control. By pride, you've turned love into a weapon, and now the consequences are coming back to us. The room fell into tense silence, only the faint hum of the estate's chandeliers filling the air. Both men, father and son, stared at each other, one driven by obsession, one torn by loyalty and lingering love. Outside, The city lights reflected off the windows like silent witnesses, hinting that the coming court battles, the secrets, and the tangled loyalties would ignite a storm far beyond the walls of the Harrington estate. The courtroom buzzed with the low murmur of anticipation. Reporters, photographers, and curious spectators filled every seat, their eyes flicking constantly between the Harringtons' polished front row and the reserved section where Victor and Eleanor sat. Calm but vigilant, the walls, tall and imposing, echoed with the shuffle of papers and the quiet clearing of throats. Eleanor sat straight, her fingers folded neatly in her lap, every ounce of poise cultivated over the past months now radiating from her. Beside her, Victor's presence was a silent shield, quiet, strong, unwavering. The judge entered, robes flowing, gavel in hand, and the room immediately fell silent. "We are now in session," he announced, voice firm but measured. "This case, Harrington v. Harrington, concerns the custody of 3 minor children. Let us proceed." Reginald's lawyers were first to speak. They stood, polished and confident, each word carefully rehearsed. "Your Honor," the lead attorney began, voice smooth. "Our clients Reginald Harrington and his son Alexander seek the welfare of 3 young children, who, by all rights, belong with their father's family. The mother, Eleanor Harrington, abandoned the household, hiding her pregnancy, and has demonstrated a pattern of irresponsible behavior. We submit that the children's safety, stability, and proper upbringing require that custody be granted to the Harringtons." A ripple of murmurs passed through the courtroom. Eleanor's heart clenched, but she did not flinch. Victor's hand brushed hers gently. A small reassurance. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We will show the truth." Next, Victor's legal team rose sleek, composed, precise. "Your Honor," the lead counsel began, voice calm but commanding. "While Mr. Harrington portrays Miss Harrington as a runaway, the reality is far different. Eleanor faced repeated harassment and abuse at the hands of Reginald Harrington, including public humiliation, emotional manipulation, and outright physical danger. We will present testimony from household staff who witnessed these actions, as well as medical documentation confirming the circumstances of one particular night, during which Miss Harrington was forced out into a storm while pregnant. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Whispers rustled in the audience. Eleanor's pulse quickened. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind, yet now, seeing the packed gallery, the press cameras, the silent judgment of strangers, anxiety threatened to rise, but she held it at bay. The first witnesses were the household staff, maids, drivers, and personal aides who had long served in the Harrington estate. Each one spoke cautiously but firmly. "I saw her being forced to leave the house in the rain," one maid recounted, voice trembling slightly under the pressure of cross-examination. "She was soaked," she cried. "And Mr. Harrington, he just watched her go," another staff member added. "I overheard Mr. Harrington mocking her behind her back, calling her common, saying she wasn't good enough for his son." Reginald shifted uncomfortably, eyes narrowing. Alexander glanced at his father, a flicker of conflict crossing his features. Eleanor listened, absorbing every word, her throat tight but her posture resolute. Then came the medical records. The attorneys presented hospital documents, photographs of soaked clothing, and notes from attending physicians. The evidence clearly demonstrates the risks Ms. Harrington faced while under Mr. Harrington's authority, Victor's lawyer stated. She did not abandon her children, she acted to protect herself and, ultimately, them. The suspense in the courtroom was palpable. Reginald's lawyers tried to counter, but each claim was met with factual evidence, clear testimony, and photographs that spoke louder than words. The tension built, and just when the scale seemed to favor the Harringtons, a surprise witness appeared: Alexander's former nanny, a woman who had cared for him since infancy. The room fell silent as she approached the stand. "I have known the Harrington family for decades," she began, voice steady. "And I must speak the truth. Reginald Harrington has a long history of manipulation and control. He has humiliated women, dictated terms of relationships, and undermined those he sees as lesser. I have witnessed him attempt to coerce, intimidate, and manipulate on numerous occasions. Not just with Eleanor, but with others throughout the household. This behavior is consistent and ongoing. It is my belief that Eleanor acted out of fear for her safety, not malice or responsibility." Gasps and murmurs swept the courtroom. Reginald's hand tightened into a fist at his side, his face pale with shock. Alexander's eyes widened, the weight of the truth pressing heavily on him. Eleanor's chest rose and fell rapidly, but her expression remained composed, her hands clasped together. Cross-examinations began, a tense dance of questions and revelations. Victor's lawyers pressed every angle, every inconsistency in the Harrington claims exposed. "So you admit that, Ms. Harrington endured repeated humiliation and threats?" one attorney asked, turning to a former staff member. "Yes," the witness replied firmly. "She endured it. She did not abandon her pregnancy. She endured it to protect herself and the unborn children." Each answer layered the narrative, constructing a clear, undeniable picture of Eleanor as a woman of integrity and courage, standing firm against oppression. Reginald's lawyers floundered, attempting to undermine the testimony, but every attack was met with corroborating evidence: photographs, hospital notes, and multiple witnesses. Eleanor sat silently through it all, feeling the tension tighten and then release as one by one the truth emerged like a tide washing over the court. Her gaze occasionally met Victor's. His nods were subtle, reassuring. She realized, in that charged, echoing courtroom, that the long months of fear, uncertainty, and trauma had led to this exact moment: justice standing ready, balanced on her courage and the evidence she had never let slip. By the end of the morning session, the courtroom atmosphere had shifted. The initial image of Eleanor as a runaway had been dismantled piece by piece, witness by witness, word by word. The suspense was electric. Every cross-examination hinted at deeper truths, at secrets yet to be unveiled, keeping the gallery, the press, and even the Harringtons themselves on the edge of their seats. And as the gavel struck for a brief recess, Eleanor breathed quietly, the weight of the ordeal heavy on her shoulders, yet tempered with hope. Outside, cameras flashed, capturing her serene yet resolute figure, but inside, Eleanor knew the battle had only just begun, and every eye, every word, every revelation would matter when the courtroom doors reopened and the next phase of confrontation unfolded. The courtroom was packed to the brim, every seat filled, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. Cameras clicked relentlessly, microphones hovered, and the low hum of whispered speculation threaded through the room like an undercurrent. The air felt electric, thick with anticipation. Eleanor sat poised, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes calm yet alert. Beside her, Victor's presence was a steadying anchor, his dark eyes vigilant, scanning every angle, anticipating every move. The judge's gavel struck sharply, cutting through the murmurs. "We will continue with the evidence presented by the plaintiff and the defense," he intoned, his voice carrying authority. We will now hear critical testimony regarding paternity and safety concerns for the minor children. Eleanor's lead attorney rose, composed, voice precise, Your Honor. We would like to present DNA results confirming the biological paternity of the Harrington triplets. A technician wheeled in a small evidence case, and papers were passed around. The DNA tests were read aloud, formal, clinical, but their significance was staggering. Ethan, Liam, and Noah Alexander's boys, undeniable by science. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Reginald's face remained stoic at first, but his jaw tightened imperceptibly. A flicker of unease crossing his otherwise composed demeanor. Alexander leaned slightly forward in his seat, shock and relief mingling in his expression. Eleanor exhaled quietly, a tension that had knotted her chest for months loosening ever so slightly. But the courtroom drama was far from over. Eleanor's attorneys had one more piece of evidence. Your Honor, one began, voice steady. We would also like to introduce video footage from security cameras operated by Mr. Victor Langston, which captures an attempted abduction of the minor children at a local park. The video played on the large monitor. Masked figures lunged toward the stroller as the triplets giggled. Unaware of the danger, Victor's bodyguards, swift and precise, intervened immediately, protecting the children and subduing the intruders. The images were clear, chilling, and irrefutable. The room fell into tense silence. The defense attorney rose, clearly unsettled. And who are these masked figures? Who is responsible for this heinous act? He asked, trying to regain control. A man in a sharp suit was called forward. Marcus Kane, Victor's business rival, whose name alone carried whispers of shady dealings. Under pressure, and facing the unyielding stare of the judge, he confessed. I was hired to intimidate, Kane admitted. Voice shaking, I was contacted indirectly by Reginald Harrington. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, some voices loud, some incredulous. Reginald's hand shot up in protest. That is an absolute lie, he roared, his face flushed, his composure cracking. I would never. This is slander. This man is a fraud. He has no proof of anything, but cracks had begun to show. The jury watched closely as Kane's testimony aligned with the previously presented evidence, the timing of the phone calls, the masked assailant's route, and the bodyguard's rapid response. Even Reginald's lawyers shifted uneasily, sensing the foundation of their case beginning to fracture. Then the unexpected happened. Alexander, previously silent and visibly conflicted, stood and approached the stand. The courtroom fell silent instantly. Cameras zoomed in. Alexander's face was solemn, the weight of truth pressing on him. Your Honor, I need to speak, he began. I must admit something that the court must know. My father, he played a role in driving Eleanor away. Gasps echoed through the room. Reporters scribbled frantically. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, but she remained composed. Reginald's face paled, veins standing out in his temple. Alexander, what are you saying? He barked, rising from his seat. Alexander took a deep breath. Unwavering, I mean that my father manipulated situations, intercepted messages, and humiliated Eleanor. He created circumstances that forced her out of my life. She did not leave voluntarily. She endured cruelty to protect herself and her unborn children. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Victor's hand brushed gently over Eleanor's shoulder. A quiet gesture of support. Eleanor felt her chest tighten. Relief and vindication mingling with lingering sorrow. Reginald's composure shattered completely. He banged his hand on the bench, voice rising. How dare you? I did everything for this family, For my legacy, I built an empire so my heirs would thrive. And you, his words faltered. Rage and fear warred across his face. You think you understand? Sacrifice. You think you know the price of success. I am the Harringtons, my blood, my name, my fortune, it's mine to control. Alexander stood firm, his voice calm but resolute. Father, you cannot control love. Nor can you control people's choices through fear. Eleanor's strength cannot be dictated by intimidation. The children deserve safety, not your obsession with legacy. The room was taut with tension, every word slicing through the air. The judge's gavel struck again, commanding silence, but the echo of Reginald's outburst lingered, marking a turning point. The truth had been revealed, alliances shifted, and the foundation of Reginald's control showed its first clear cracks. Eleanor's heart beat rapidly, a strange combination of fear, relief, and the first taste of triumph. Victor's eyes met hers, unwavering and protective, silently promising her and the boys that they were no longer vulnerable. In that courtroom, under the weight of revelations, confessions, and undeniable evidence, the battle had escalated into a war of truth versus control, and the tides were beginning to turn. The courtroom was silent, tension thick enough to choke on, as Victor Langston rose to testify. Every eye in the room followed him, some with curiosity, some with quiet apprehension. Cameras whirred, recording every movement, every word. Victor's steps were measured, deliberate, carrying the weight of authority and purpose. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and then looked directly at the judge, his voice steady and commanding. Your Honor, he began. I am here not just as Eleanor's husband and the father figure to her children, but as someone with first-hand experience of the malice and interference of Reginald Harrington. I have known him professionally. In the past, his actions directly sabotaged business ventures that I worked tirelessly to build. He acted out of jealousy, ego, and a desire to dominate. I vowed then, and I vow now, to protect this family from such harm. Reginald's face tightened, a vein standing out in his temple, fingers curling into fists. He rose slightly, a protest forming on his lips, but Victor's calm, unwavering gaze met his, and he faltered, unsure how to respond. Victor continued, voice steady, yet each word charged with intensity. I am not here for revenge. I am here to ensure the safety, stability, and well-being of my wife and children. Threats, intimidation, and manipulation will not succeed. I am prepared to protect them at all costs. A hush fell across the courtroom. Eleanor's eyes filled slightly, and she reached for Victor's hand under the table, squeezing it. His presence, firm and resolute, gave her courage. Then it was her turn. Eleanor rose, voice shaking at first, but growing stronger as she spoke. Your Honor, I want to recount the night that changed my life, the night I was cast out of the Harrington estate. I had trusted that family. I had trusted Reginald, and I loved Alexander deeply. That night, when I was 3 months pregnant, Reginald threw my belongings into the rain, shouted at me, and demanded I leave immediately. I begged him. I pleaded for my life, for my unborn children's safety, and he slammed the door on me. I wandered the streets, soaked, exhausted, terrified, and alone. I do not exaggerate when I say that it was the most frightening, humiliating, and painful moment of my life. Her voice caught, tears forming, but she drew strength from her conviction. I endured that night to protect my children. I endured it to survive. I endured it because I had no other choice. I ask the court to understand that my actions since then have always been guided by love, responsibility, and the need to shield my family from harm. A murmur swept through the courtroom. The judge's eyes softened, a small, sympathetic nod acknowledging her bravery. The jury shifted, the weight of her words hanging in the air, almost palpable. The court recessed for a short break. Eleanor walked through the hallway, her hands lightly clutching her notes. Her mind still swirling with adrenaline, she was alone for a moment. The echoes of footsteps and muted chatter surrounding her. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him, Reginald. He stepped toward her, and steady but desperate, his voice low and urgent. "Eleanor, please, just hear me. I didn't mean for—" Eleanor's posture stiffened. Her voice was icy, measured, cutting through the tension. "Stay away from me." Reginald's face contorted. A mixture of fear and regret. I just your children, they're mine. They're Alexander's blood. I can help. I can make this right, just give me a chance." Before he could take another step, Victor appeared. His presence was sudden and commanding. A protective wall between Eleanor and the storm of Reginald's desperation. "Stay back," Victor said. His voice low but lethal with authority. Reginald froze, swallowing hard. Realizing he had no power here, Victor's eyes bore into him, and flinching, a quiet but unmistakable warning. "She is safe, the children are safe. Any further action from you, and the consequences will be yours to face." Reginald stepped back, his lips trembling, finally retreating. Muttering under his breath, Eleanor exhaled slowly, relief washing over her as Victor guided her back toward the courtroom. Back in session, the drama escalated further. Eleanor's attorneys presented a set of documents that had recently come to light, leaked files showing Reginald's attempts to falsify business records to discredit Victor, records intended to paint Victor as untrustworthy and scrupulous, and financially unstable. The courtroom fell silent again as the evidence was reviewed. The documents exposed not just fraud, but Reginald's obsession, his lengths to manipulate perception and undermine anyone who stood in his way. Victor's attorneys highlighted the connections, methodically unraveling Reginald's plot, showing how his own schemes had backfired spectacularly. Each revelation caused whispers, stunned expressions, and a growing sense of inevitability among the jury. Victor rose once more, voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, as you can see, these documents not only attempt to malign my character, but they also reveal the calculated nature of Mr. Harrington's interference. We trust that the court will weigh this evidence carefully when considering the safety and best interests of the children." Eleanor sat, hands trembling slightly, overwhelmed by the intensity of the day but strengthened by the truth standing clearly before the room. She glanced at Victor, eyes reflecting gratitude, admiration, and trust. He met her gaze, a subtle nod affirming that he would not let her, nor the boys, face harm again. And as the judge reviewed the evidence, the courtroom felt like a stage, the tension coiled tightly, the audience hanging on every word, every gesture. Truth, courage, and unwavering protection had collided with manipulation, obsession, and greed, and the first clear signs of justice, however tentative, were beginning to take hold. The courtroom was silent, tension thick enough to choke on, as Victor Langston rose to testify. Every eye in the room followed him, some with curiosity, some with quiet apprehension. Cameras whirred, recording every movement, every word. Victor's steps were measured, deliberate, carrying the weight of authority and purpose. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and then looked directly at the judge, his voice steady and commanding. "Your Honor," he began, "I am here not just as Eleanor's husband and the father figure to her children, but as someone with first-hand experience of the malice and interference of Reginald Harrington. I have known him professionally. In the past, his actions directly sabotaged business ventures that I worked tirelessly to build. He acted out of jealousy, ego, and a desire to dominate. I vowed then, and I vow now, to protect this family from such harm. Reginald's face tightened. A vein standing out in his temple, fingers curling into fists. He rose slightly, a protest forming on his lips, but Victor's calm, unwavering gaze met his, and he faltered, unsure how to respond. Victor continued, voice steady, yet each word charged with intensity. I am not here for revenge. I am here to ensure the safety, stability, and well-being of my wife and children. Threats, intimidation, and manipulation will not succeed. I am prepared to protect them at all costs. A hush fell across the courtroom. Eleanor's eyes filled slightly, and she reached for Victor's hand under the table, squeezing it. His presence, firm and resolute, gave her courage. Then it was her turn. Eleanor rose, voice shaking at first, but growing stronger as she spoke. Your Honor, I want to recount the night that changed my life, the night I was cast out of the Harrington estate. I had trusted that family. I had trusted Reginald, and I loved Alexander deeply. That night, when I was 3 months pregnant, Reginald threw my belongings into the rain, shouted at me, and demanded I leave immediately. I begged him. I pleaded for my life, for my unborn children's safety, and he slammed the door on me. I wandered the streets, soaked, exhausted, terrified, and alone. I do not exaggerate when I say that it was the most frightening, humiliating, and painful moment of my life. Her voice caught, tears forming, but she drew strength from her conviction. I endured that night to protect my children. I endured it to survive. I endured it because I had no other choice. I ask the court to understand that my actions since then have always been guided by love, responsibility, and the need to shield my family from harm. A murmur swept through the courtroom. The judges. I softened, a small, sympathetic nod acknowledging her bravery. The jury shifted, the weight of her words hanging in the air, almost palpable. The court recessed for a short break. Eleanor walked through the hallway, her hands lightly clutching her notes, her mind still swirling with adrenaline. She was alone for a moment. The echoes of footsteps and muted chatter surrounding her. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him, Reginald. He stepped toward her, and steady but desperate, his voice low and urgent. Eleanor, please, just hear me. I didn't mean for... Eleanor's posture stiffened. Her voice was icy, measured, cutting through the tension. Stay away from me. Reginald's face contorted, a mixture of fear and regret. I just your children, they're mine. They're Alexander's blood. I can help. I can make this right, just give me a chance. Before he could take another step, Victor appeared. His presence was sudden and commanding, a protective wall between Eleanor and the storm of Reginald's desperation. Stay back, Victor said, his voice low but lethal with authority. Reginald froze, swallowing hard, realizing he had no power here. Victor's eyes bore into him, and flinching, a quiet but unmistakable warning. She is safe, the children are safe. Any further action from you, and the consequences will be yours to face. Reginald stepped back, his lips trembling, finally retreating. Muttering under his breath, Eleanor exhaled slowly, relief washing over her as Victor guided her back toward the courtroom. Back in session, the drama escalated further. Eleanor's attorneys presented a set of documents that had recently come to light, leaked files showing Reginald's attempts to falsify business records to discredit Victor. records intended to paint Victor as untrustworthy and scrupulous, and financially unstable. The courtroom fell silent again as the evidence was reviewed. The documents exposed not just fraud, but Reginald's obsession, his lengths to manipulate perception and undermine anyone who stood in his way. Victor's attorneys highlighted the connections, methodically unraveling Reginald's plot, showing how his own schemes had backfired spectacularly. Each revelation caused whispers, stunned expressions, and a growing sense of inevitability among the jury. Victor rose once more, voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, as you can see, these documents not only attempt to malign my character, but they also reveal the calculated nature of Mr. Harrington's interference. We trust that the court will weigh this evidence carefully when considering the safety and best interests of the children." Eleanor sat, hands trembling slightly, overwhelmed by the intensity of the day but strengthened by the truth standing clearly before the room. She glanced at Victor, eyes reflecting gratitude, admiration, and trust. He met her gaze, a subtle nod affirming that he would not let her, nor the boys, face harm again. And as the judge reviewed the evidence, the courtroom felt like a stage, the tension coiled tightly, the audience hanging on every word, every gesture. Truth, courage, and unwavering protection had collided with manipulation, obsession, and greed, and the first clear signs of justice, however tentative, were beginning to take hold. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that presses down on the chest, where even breathing feels conspicuous. Eleanor sat with Victor at her side, hands clasped tightly, feeling the weight of months of fear, struggle, and uncertainty. The judge, a tall woman with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through every pretense, finally spoke. After reviewing the evidence, the testimonies, and the circumstances surrounding the well-being of the children, this court rules in favor of Eleanor Harrington and Victor Langston. Full custody of the minor children Ethan, Liam, and Noah is hereby granted to the parents. Additionally, a restraining order is issued against Reginald Harrington. He is prohibited from making contact with the children or their guardians under any circumstances. Any violation will result in immediate legal consequences. Eleanor exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Relief washed over her in a wave so strong it made her knees feel weak. She turned toward Victor, eyes glistening. We did it," she whispered, voice barely audible, trembling with emotion. Victor smiled, squeezing her hand firmly, as if anchoring her to reality. "No, Eleanor, you did it. You stood your ground. You fought for them, for us, for this family." Alexander, sitting quietly in the back with his attorney, looked stricken. His shoulders slumped, his hands clutching the armrests of his chair. The judge continued, addressing him. "Alexander Harrington, you may have supervised visitation rights, but only if the children express a desire to see you. Any contact must be coordinated through their legal guardians. This court emphasizes the importance of stability and emotional safety for the children." Alexander's voice was low, tight with guilt. I understand, Your Honor. Thank you." Reginald sat frozen, his face pale and drawn. He looked around the courtroom, eyes landing on Victor and Eleanor. And for the first time, a flicker of fear passed across his expression. The empire he had built with so much ruthlessness, the influence he had wielded, the fear he had instilled in others, it was unraveling in front of him. Word was already circulating that several business partners were pulling out of joint ventures, leaving his companies on shaky ground. He had been a tyrant in life, and now he faced isolation, legal consequences, and the weight of his own guilt. The moment the judge banged the gavel, Eleanor felt a rush of elation and freedom. She rose from her seat, her dress flowing gently round her, and turned toward Victor. Tears streaked her cheeks, but her smile was radiant, a combination of relief, triumph, and hard-earned joy. Victor guided her toward the courthouse doors, his hand firmer on hers, their children safely in the care of trusted aides. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the city streets. The triplets, bundled up and curious, gurgled and pointed at the passing cars. Oblivious to the storm their mother had weathered, Eleanor laughed, a sound of pure release. As Victor lifted one of the boys into his arms, "We made it," he murmured. Ethan's little fingers wrapped around his father's, and in that moment, Victor's heart swelled with the depth of love and responsibility he felt for this family. Over the next weeks, life slowly regained a sense of rhythm. Eleanor and Victor celebrated quietly, cherishing simple moments, a morning breakfast together, gentle baths for the boys, laughter echoing through the halls of their home. Their bond, tempered by trials and shared danger, was unbreakable. Eleanor felt a confidence she had never known before. Elegance and strength emanating from every gesture. The past still lingered, but she had conquered it. 2 years later, the family had settled into a life of warmth and stability. The triplets were curious, lively, and full of energy. Ethan had his father's inquisitive mind, Liam his mother's gentle heart, and Noah an adventurous streak that kept everyone on their toes. They often asked questions about their biological father, and Eleanor answered carefully, balancing honesty with protection. Alexander, having rebuilt his own sense of morality and distance from Reginald's toxic influence, reached out cautiously, a simple phone call, tentative and respectful, asking about the boys. Eleanor considered his words carefully, watching the triplets play. She nodded to Victor, who smiled reassuringly. "Let's see how it goes," he murmured. But life, as always, carried hints of shadows. One evening, as Victor reviewed foundation reports, a courier arrived with a small envelope, sealed and anonymous. Victor opened it carefully, and inside was a letter, cryptic and ominous, hinting at another hidden family secret, a mystery that threatened to stir past troubles back into the present. He exchanged a glance with Eleanor, whose eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Eleanor's voiceover began, soft, reflective, yet filled with the strength that had carried her through every storm. Life tests us in ways we never expect. It challenges our patience, our courage, and our hearts. But love, real love, survives the trials. It strengthens us. It protects us. It teaches us that family is not always what you inherit, but what you choose, what you nurture, and what you fight for. And no matter the shadows that may come, I know we will face them together. Always. The camera pulled back slowly, fading over the family photos that lined their walls. Victor holding the triplets in his arms, Eleanor smiling beside him, the boys laughing freely, oblivious to the chaos that had once surrounded them. Outside, the sun set gently, casting long shadows that promised both endings and new beginnings. The screen faded to black, leaving viewers with the lingering question: what hidden secret awaited this family next?